These are loving relationships.
Yeah.
Sex is part of it, but that's not a focus.
But was it a physical relationship where you both were just attracted to each other?
Kody Brown once stood before the world as the proud leader of a sprawling polygamous family, a man who sold viewers on the dream of unity, equality, and faith. But behind the carefully edited scenes of sister wives, there was a darker truth unraveling, year by year, one that would eventually shatter the illusion and expose the cracks in his empire. The moment that made fans truly recoil was when Kody looked directly at Janelle on national television and told her, without flinching, that he would not support her kids if she wasn't loyal to him. It was a chilling line, a threat disguised as logic, and it revealed more than he probably ever intended. This wasn't love, this wasn't family. This was control, and it was emotional manipulation broadcast for the world to see. And if you thought that was bad, what came after was even worse. Because not long after, Kody, the same man who emotionally discarded both Meri and Janelle, had the audacity to try and convince them to help financially support Robyn's children. Imagine that. The wives he left behind, the women he ignored, the ones he openly admitted he no longer loved. He wanted them to provide for the kids of the one woman he never abandoned. If that isn't the definition of favoritism and gaslighting, what is? Hi everyone, and welcome back to GlowGossips USA, where we dive deep into the truth, the heartbreak, and the shocking twists of sister wives. This isn't just about drama, it's about exposing the emotional devastation, the manipulation, and the choices that tore this family apart. If you've been following this story as closely as we have, you know it's not just a TV show anymore. It's a public unraveling of a man who claimed to be the patriarch of a united family, but who only showed up for one wife. If you're just as stunned and heartbroken as millions of fans watching this collapse, make sure you hit that subscribe button, tap like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Janelle or Meri owe Kody anything after all the pain he put them through? Or should they finally stand tall, walk away, and let him face the fallout of his own choices? Because today we're pulling back the curtain on one of the ugliest truths of this entire saga: Kody's demand for child support from the very wives he discarded. A demand that not only exposed his obsession with Robyn, but also revealed years of imbalance and manipulation that destroyed the foundations of this family. This is more than gossip. This is the anatomy of a broken spiritual marriage, one that promised equality but delivered heartbreak, one that preached unity but enforced division, and one that showcased love while quietly nurturing betrayal. So buckle up, because what we're about to unpack will leave you questioning whether Kody Brown ever truly loved anyone beyond the reflection he saw in Robyn's eyes. The truth is, it didn't happen all at once. Kody didn't just wake up one day and declare Robyn the queen of his world, even if in his actions that's exactly what she became. It was a slow burn, a gradual shift, the kind of betrayal that creeps in quietly before it suddenly consumes everything. In the early days back in Las Vegas, the Brown family's chaos still felt balanced. 4 wives, 4 homes, nearly 20 children. Yes, it was overwhelming, but at least on camera it seemed like Kody was juggling his responsibilities fairly. He laughed in one kitchen, shared meals in another, and although the system was flawed, there was a sense of rhythm. But all of that began to change once Robyn entered the picture. At first it was subtle, an extra night here, a longer conversation there, but soon it became impossible to ignore. Kody wasn't just showing favoritism. He was building his entire life around Robyn while letting the other wives slowly wither in the shadows. Christine was the first to truly sense it, and she didn't hide her heartbreak. As early as season 6, she admitted on camera that she no longer felt special, that her place in Kody's heart had been quietly replaced by Robyn. She was brave enough to put words to what everyone else was already noticing. Then Janelle echoed the same frustrations. She noticed Kody's visits becoming inconsistent, always interrupted or excused by things happening at Robyn's house. She was left alone more often than not, while her children slowly began to realize that their father wasn't really present for them. And then there was Meri, poor Meri, who held on longer than most, who convinced herself again and again that if she just tried harder, waited longer, or loved more deeply, Kody would return to her the way he once had. But it never happened. The wow moment Robyn stepped into the family, Meri's unique role as the emotional confidant, the wife Kody leaned on, vanished into thin air. Whether or not Robin actively sought that crown, the truth was undeniable. She wore it, and Kody made sure she kept it. From then on, Robin wasn't just another wife. She was the only wife who truly mattered. She became the one Kody defended, no matter the cost. She became the one whose children he prioritized, sometimes at the expense of his own biological kids with the other women. She became the one he trusted with decisions, the one he publicly praised, the one who always seemed to be the exception to every rule. And slowly, the rest of the family was left gasping for air, suffocating under the weight of neglect and favoritism. It wasn't favoritism anymore. It was abandonment dressed up as justification. The breaking point came during the pandemic. Suddenly, Kody used safety as his weapon. He imposed strict, suffocating rules on the family, rules that Janelle and Christine found impossible to follow given their households full of adult children coming and going. They were labeled irresponsible, disobedient, uncaring. But Robin's home was spotless, her children compliant, her walls guarded. And so Kody stayed there month after month, making excuse after excuse. He claimed it was about safety, but everyone watching knew the truth. It wasn't about protocols, it was about preference. Christine said it best when she finally admitted, with pain and exhaustion etched on her face, "He's not just with Robin more, he's not with us at all." And that was the moment it became clear to millions. This wasn't a family anymore. This was a man with one wife, using religion, obligation, and guilt to keep the others in line until they finally found the courage to walk away. And that courage did come. Christine walked first, refusing to live in a marriage where she wasn't loved. She packed her bags, left the life she had built, and started anew, and in doing so, she gave Janelle and Mary the blueprint they needed. But before they could step into their freedom, Kody delivered his most jaw-dropping demand yet, that the women he abandoned, the wives he refused to love, should still provide financial support for Robin's children. He wanted child support from the very people he left behind, an audacious request that stripped away whatever illusions remained about who Kody really was. It wasn't about unity. It wasn't about faith. It wasn't about family. It was about control. It was about propping up the one relationship he refused to sacrifice, no matter who else had to suffer for it. And so the question now lingers in the air, heavy and undeniable. How much longer can Kody keep spinning this web of favoritism and manipulation before it collapses entirely? His wives are gone, his children are fractured, and the world has seen too much to pretend otherwise. The dream is dead. The empire is crumbling. And all that's left is the raw, ugly truth that love, in Kody Brown's world, always came with conditions. And those
He led me to believe that he would work on things by saying, "Oh, Mary, when we move to Flagstaff, this will be a good time to have a new beginning for us."
In Kody Brown's world, loyalty was never truly about love. It was about obedience. One by one, his wives discovered this painful truth as the years dragged on. They came into this family believing they were stepping into a covenant of equality and unity, but instead they learned that love had conditions. Validation had to be earned. And if you didn't play by Kody's ever-shifting rules, you would eventually be discarded. The dream that began with promises of faith and family slowly curdled into something darker, something that looked far more like control than care. And it was within that framework that the wives began to unravel, each on her own timeline, each enduring the slow erosion of her worth in a marriage where affection was weaponized. Janelle was perhaps the strongest, the most independent of the wives. Logical, self-sufficient, grounded, she often described herself as not overly emotional, and for a long time that strength protected her. But even she couldn't escape Kody's shifting demands. By the time season 17 rolled around, Kody had hardened into ultimatums. He no longer asked for compromise, he demanded loyalty as the price of his presence. Janelle was forced to choose. Either she sided with him completely, or she risked losing him altogether. There was no middle ground. But the breaking point came when Kody turned his anger not just on her, but on their children. During the fallout from the pandemic, Janelle's sons stood up against Kody's suffocating, unreasonable rules. Instead of seeking understanding, Kody lashed out at Janelle. He accused her of betrayal, of failing him, of not being loyal enough, all because she refused to exile her own kids to appease him. It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't a dialogue. It was a threat. Either choose me or lose me. And Janelle, strong as ever, refused to sacrifice her children at the altar of Kody's ego. But if Janelle was pushed into a corner, Christine had been living in one for years. Her story was a slow, painful descent into invisibility. Fans watched her twist herself into knots for scraps of affection, begging Kody to show up, to be engaged, to want her. She tried everything: gentle conversations, emotional pleas, even silence. Yet every time she voiced her pain, Kody turned it back on her. He said she was playing the victim. He accused her of undermining the family. He implied her needs were too much, her standards unfair. And when their daughter truly faced a terrifying heart surgery, Christine was forced to make decisions in Kody's absence. Rather than admit he had already checked out emotionally, Kody weaponized that moment against her. He used it as proof that Christine had disrespected him, ignoring the years of abandonment that had led to that point. By the time Christine finally chose to leave, Kody painted her as the villain, accusing her of breaking the family, as if he hadn't already shattered it by refusing to love her long before. And then there was Mary. If Janelle and Christine fought for Kody's time, Mary fought for his heart. She was the one who endured the longest stretch of emotional starvation. Even after her catfishing scandal, a moment that publicly exposed her loneliness and desperation, Mary still tried. She offered olive branches, extended kindness, and confessed her love. She clung to hope with a quiet dignity, waiting for the smallest signal from Kody that he still cared. But time and again, Kody made it clear, on camera and off, that he had no romantic interest in her. He would say it bluntly. He was never going to have that kind of relationship with her again. And yet he never officially released her either. He let her linger, dangling in limbo, because her loyalty still served him. Keeping her tethered without love, without affection, was still power. Mary was trapped in a cruel paradox, discarded as a wife but kept as a symbol of obedience. For these women, marriage to Kody became less about love and more about survival. They weren't partners, they were emotional hostages. Their worth was tied to how well they could prove themselves, how much pain they could endure, and how little they could ask for. Respect was conditional. Validation was withheld. And all the while, they watched as another wife never once had to beg. Robyn was the exception. Robyn was the chosen one. From the moment she entered the family, Kody's adoration for her was absolute. She didn't need to prove her loyalty. She didn't need to bend or break. She was embraced, adored, defended, protected. While Christine begged for attention, while Janelle fought for respect, while Mary waited for crumbs, Robyn had the feast. Kody praised her as obedient, respectful, loyal to the family. But the truth was simpler. Robyn wasn't loyal. To the family, she was loyal to him, and in Kody's eyes, that was all that mattered. While the other wives twisted themselves into knots, Robyn already stood at the finish line, crowned by Kody's favoritism. That wasn't love. It was hierarchy. It wasn't unity. It was control. Over time, the hopeful women viewers first met in season 1 became unrecognizable. Their strength, their vibrancy, their hope dimmed into weariness. One by one, they realized that this wasn't the life they had signed up for, and worse, it was never going to get better. They endured years of being diminished, silenced, and overlooked, until finally the weight of the truth became too heavy to ignore. But if there was ever one moment that destroyed the illusion of fairness completely, it came later, when the emotional cracks had widened into canyons and Kody dropped a bombshell so outrageous, so tone-deaf, that fans across the world were left speechless. He wanted child support, not for Truly. Not for Logan or Gabriel or even Leon. No, Kody wanted Janelle and Mary, 2 women he had effectively abandoned, to financially contribute to Robyn's children. Let that sink in. The same man who had withheld love, time, and partnership from them now felt entitled to their money. He wanted them to fund the life he was building with Robyn, the life he had denied them for years. And perhaps most shocking of all, Robyn didn't stop him. She didn't defend the other wives. She didn't reject the demand. She sat quietly, as she often did when Kody waded into messy waters, and let him humiliate and alienate the rest of the family in front of millions. But Janelle, the woman who had sacrificed so much, wasn't about to stay silent. Her reaction was fierce, immediate, unfiltered. She had already endured years of living in near poverty while trying to build her dream on Coyote Pass. She had lived in a tiny RV, scraped by with her own financial independence, and carried burdens Kody never even bothered to notice. And now, after all of that, he dared to ask her to help raise the children he had with another woman? Her response was swift. No. No apologies. No negotiation. Just no. It wasn't only unfair, it was an insult. An insult to her sacrifices, to her loyalty, to her children, to her very dignity. And then there was Mary. Poor Mary, who had been emotionally exiled for nearly a decade, suddenly found herself pulled back into the picture when money was on the table. In Kody's eyes, she wasn't a wife anymore. Not romantically, not spiritually, not emotionally. But when it came to financial responsibility, suddenly she counted again. The hypocrisy was staggering. Fans erupted in outrage. Social media lit up with disbelief. How could Kody ask that? Did he even hear himself? Robyn was the only wife he lived with, the only one he supported, the only one he claimed as a true partner. So why should the discarded wives pay for her children? The answer was clear. This was never about family. It was about entitlement. Kody believed deep down that no matter how much he abandoned these women, no matter how much pain he caused, he still had the right to demand from them. He still saw them as extensions of his authority, bound to him even when he had broken every promise. It wasn't child support. It was a test of control. It was manipulation, plain and simple. He wanted to see how far his power reached, how much he could still take from women he no longer gave anything to. And Robyn, by staying silent, became complicit. Her quiet acceptance only deepened the wound, proving to the others that the family wasn't plural anymore. It was singular. It was Kody and Robyn, and everyone else was just footing the bill. In that moment, whatever scraps of mythology remained about equal wives, shared responsibilities, and balanced love disintegrated. The dream was over. The illusion shattered. Because if Kody Brown could stand in front of the world and ask abandoned wives for money to raise the children of his favorite, then he wasn't just finished as a husband. He was finished pretending. The mask was off. And what lay beneath was not the leader of a family, but the dictator of a fractured empire, clinging desperately to power while everything else crumbled around him. The tension in the Brown family had reached a breaking point. What once seemed like a united front for the cameras had now shattered into sharp, jagged pieces that cut deeper with every passing day. The world outside saw the smiling faces in the earlier seasons, the illusion of a big, happy family built on faith, cooperation, and unity. But behind closed doors, inside the fragile walls of their separate homes, there was chaos, bitterness, and wounds that refused to heal. At the center of it all, Robyn's tears continued to flow, and Kody's anger continued to burn, leaving everyone else in the crossfire. Mary had been silent for too long. She was the first wife, the one who had seen the rise and fall of Kody's affection more than anyone else. She knew what it felt like to be adored, and she knew what it felt like to be discarded like a broken piece of furniture. The years of waiting, hoping, and begging for scraps of his attention had turned her into a ghost in her own marriage. And now, as Robyn played the victim with her quivering lips and trembling voice, Mary could no longer pretend she didn't see what was happening. Robyn was no victim. She was the orchestrator of Kody's new world, the one who sat comfortably on the throne while the other wives were left fighting for crumbs. Christine, however, had already broken free. Her decision to leave had been met with gasps and outrage at first, but as time passed, people saw it for what it was, an act of survival. She was the only one brave enough to admit that the dream had become a nightmare, and her courage gave the others a mirror to look into. When Christine walked away, she carried not only her belongings but also her dignity, something that had long been stripped from her within that household. She had found love again with David, and though some criticized her for moving on so quickly, the truth was simple. She had already mourned the death of her marriage years before she ever packed her bags. Janelle stood in the middle, torn between loyalty and exhaustion. She had invested years, money, and energy into building the so-called future at Coyote Pass. She had believed in the dream of living side by side, building homes for each wife and creating a legacy for their children. But that dream had turned into dust, buried under Kody's favoritism and Robyn's crocodile tears. Janelle had been practical, steady, and patient, but patience has its limits. Her breaking point had arrived when she realized she was no longer a wife but a placeholder, someone Kody called when he needed financial backing, but ignored when she needed emotional support. The most chilling part of all was watching Kody transform. The man who once preached about love, unity, and plural marriage had become unrecognizable. His obsession with Robyn was no longer hidden, it was flaunted. He didn't bother to balance his attention anymore. His conversations with the other wives were laced with criticism and contempt, while Robyn received sympathy, gifts, and endless reassurances. His children from the other wives saw it too. They saw how their father's love had become conditional, how his time and energy were spent almost entirely on Robyn and her children, while their own needs were brushed aside. When the cameras caught Robyn crying once again, sobbing about how she never wanted the family to fall apart, viewers rolled their eyes. They had seen this performance before. The tears came like clockwork, whenever accountability was close, whenever the spotlight turned to her actions. But behind those tears was a strategy. Robyn knew exactly how to play the victim, and she knew Kody would leap to her defense every time. It was a cycle that had destroyed the family, yet she continued it without hesitation. Mary finally spoke, out, her voice carrying the weight of years of silence. She called out the favoritism, the manipulation, and the lies. Her words weren't shouted, they were steady, deliberate, and piercing. For once, she wasn't begging for Kody's attention. She was demanding the truth. The shock on Kody's face was evident. He wasn't used to Mary pushing back. For years, she had been the quiet one, the one he thought would never leave no matter how much he neglected her. But the woman standing before him now wasn't the same Mary he had dismissed. This Mary had fire in her eyes, and she wasn't afraid to burn the illusions to the ground. Christine, watching from the sidelines, felt both sorrow and pride. She knew what it took to reach that point. She knew the courage it required to finally put yourself first in a system designed to break you down. Her heart ached for Mary and Janelle, but she also felt relief knowing she wasn't the only one who saw the truth. She wasn't crazy, she wasn't selfish, she was free. And she hoped, desperately, that they too would find the strength to free themselves. Janelle, however, struggled with the practical consequences. Walking away wasn't easy. There were finances, land disputes, and years of shared investments tangled together. Leaving meant untangling a web so thick it felt impossible. But the emotional cost of staying was even greater. Janelle loved her children more than anything, and seeing the pain in their eyes every time their father chose Robyn over them was unbearable. She had to decide whether staying in the marriage for the sake of stability was worth the cost of her children's broken trust. As the dust continued to settle, the world outside watched in fascination. Fans debated fiercely online. Some sympathized with Robyn, believing her tears were genuine. Others saw through the performance, calling her the mastermind behind the family's collapse. Hashtags trended, headlines screamed, and the Browns' dirty laundry was aired for everyone to see. But beyond the gossip and the memes, there was a deeper story unfolding. A story of women reclaiming their power after years of silence. The collapse of the Brown family wasn't just about polygamy failing. It was about manipulation, favoritism, and broken promises. It was about what happens when one person's needs consistently outweigh everyone else's. It was about the danger of ignoring your own worth for the sake of someone else's happiness. And most of all, it was about how even in the darkest moments, there is a chance to rebuild, to find love again, and to rise stronger than before. Robyn sat in her house, clutching tissues, sobbing about how she never wanted this. Yet deep down, she knew the truth. She had the man, she had the legal marriage, she had the security. But what she didn't have was the respect of the other, wives, or the trust of the viewers. She had won the battle for Kody's heart, but she had lost the war for authenticity. And so, as the season closed with dramatic music and lingering shots of tear-streaked faces, fans were left asking the same question over and over again. Was this ever really about family, or was it always about power? Because one thing was clear: the Sister Wives' story was no longer about unity. It was about survival, truth, and the consequences of putting one person on a pedestal while everyone else was left in the shadows.